So the next white varietal that we will be talking about is Riesling. And maybe some of you guys heard this word and you're like, oh, I cringe when I hear Riesling. It's all I can think of is just this overly sweet wine. And honestly, that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to Rieslings is because they have that, kind of image of everybody that, everybody's like, well, Rieslings are just super sweet and I don't really like sweet wines and it's basically a dessert wine. And that is true on some types of Rieslings, and we will talk about those. But actually, Rieslings themselves, they are the most misunderstood wine varietal out there because of this stereotype that they have about being overly sweet. And that's only one type of Riesling that's actually produced. There's a really interesting video kind of talking about how Riesling is so unique and how even picking the grapes it has you have to be so careful because there is a rot that it takes on the grapes themselves, and you have to separate the grapes themselves. So make sure you look at that video, which I posted below in the lecture. So the characteristics of a Riesling are not sweet. They're actually anything but sweet. This is a highly acidic wine. So this is something where you are talking about, lemon, lime, even grapefruit. You might have an undertone of a little bit of like a peachy and a pear, but it's really, really difficult to give you a standard profile because of the characteristics of Riesling are very particular to each vine. I mean, you can have different flavor profiles of Rieslings or of grapes coming from just one single vineyard. So they are so unique and they are so difficult, but one of the things that they absolutely are not, unless you are making them that way, is actually, that I would never use the description sweet for Riesling in general. So Riesling is not finicky regarding soil, but the flavors are really, really drastically, affected by it. Most Rieslings are grown in very, very steep hills. I mean, unlike the rolling vineyards that you've seen, in California, and, Rieslings are a lot of times it's almost you see these vines growing, you're like, how are people going to harvest them? Because you're going to literally need to be mountain climbing in order to get the grapes, and it really, that's where the flavors are coming from. They really like that rocky volcanic soil in order to grow in. So it's literally that it's very, very different from vineyard to vineyard. So Riesling is 100% a cool to cold weather grape. So I'll show you a map of where the best Rieslings are coming from. But we really are looking at long, cool, cold ripening periods. In the United States, we have had some amazing Rieslings coming out of the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. And part of the reason is if you look on that map, again, you'll see that where the latitude, longitude, remember the map that we talked about before at the beginning of class, you'll see that it actually is in the same latitude as the kind of Germany and Austria in that region where it's growing really well. So Germany, Austria, that's when we talk about the best Rieslings. That's where they're coming out of. I've had some amazing ones from Austria, Switzerland. It's just anything where you can think of nothing too hot, nothing, we really need to make sure that there are these long cold periods for this wine. So the Rhine River is basically what we're looking at as far as, that kind of guides you along this Riesling production area of Europe especially. And this is kind of showing you where it's stretching, and, it goes all the way from Holland, all the way down to kind of Hungary. And this really right here is kind of this huge, they're just huge producers of fabulous Rieslings in this particular area. So Riesling itself, it does really well when the winemaker doesn't do much, because it is so complex itself that those flavors really, really come out. So most of the Rieslings, they're actually done in stainless steel. Sometimes some winemakers, they might use a little bit of old oak. So once again, definitely not fresh oak, but old oak for additional flavor. And we actually can turn a lot of Rieslings into sparkling wine. So if you're looking at sparkling wine that's coming out of Germany, Austria, or anything like that, most often they will be using Rieslings for that production. So the appearance and the tasting notes, this is something where it's a very clear wine. It has high acidity. This is one of the only wines that actually has some age abilities. Chardonnays have some as well, of course, but I mean, we have some Rieslings that age really well, up to 20 years, which is once again talk about that complexity that people don't always think of. So the appearance of this wine and the acidity of the wine and just everything that you might think of, the some of the best pairings for Rieslings are actually super super spicy foods. And it really, some people are like, well, I don't know, I wouldn't think of that, but something like really spicy Thai food goes really really well with these really crisp and acidic Rieslings, and that's a great pairing. So don't shy away from Rieslings, because you might think that they're super super sweet. Most of them are actually super acidic and very refreshing.